Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Salma Kazi Wahab, and come 1st of February every year we commemorate World Hijab Day, and for the first time we decided to have our very own in-house panel discussion on what it actually means to you, to me, and to everyone around us. How the society, how community plays a role in it, what inspiration or what lessons we can take as to what the hijab, the role it should play in our lives. It's more than just a headscarf, and it's actually just a way of life as well. But we all are on our own journey, and let's see how we can help each other to grow, to prosper, and become better Muslim women at the end of the day. Joining me today for the very first time on this wonderful discussion, we're so excited to host dearest Fazana from Modest. Welcome. You're a wonderful hijab stylist, designer, makeup artist as well, I think. So it's so wonderful to have your contribution here today. Shaa'ista Kathree, no stranger to everyone, a familiar face, well-known marketer and public figure, been in the spotlight for the longest time. So she's going to have such a fantastic contribution as well. Nazmeera Vally, first time I think putting you on a hot spot like this, but you're somebody that knows the industry through and through, and you are the source of our physical hijabs for most of us when we are looking for it. And I think your brand Fabulous Things also plays a big role in actually making sure, from the abaya inners to the abayas to the scarves, you play a huge role in the growth and understanding and appreciation of the scarf as well, and dressing a certain way. And of course, none other than our Shaykha Umme Rooman Soofie, a regular on Radio Al Ansar as well, for your input is most valuable and most crucial, especially since it is called World Hijab Day. The concept in itself, we must just at the onset clarify, put a little disclaimer out there that all views and opinions that you may hear on the program, the views and opinions expressed by the guests, by the panel, do not represent the other, do not represent my own views, do not represent the radio station or Radio Al Ansar. This is purely open discussion and free-flowing thoughts and opinions meant to inspire the women and our female listeners and male listeners and our young listeners and children as well. But let's not waste any time. Let's dive straight into it. But let's create also a clearer understanding. It is called World Hijab Day around the world, and people say, I'm going into hijab, or I'm wearing the hijab. But hijab in itself, does it literally mean the scarf, or are we correctly using the term, or how should we be using that term of hijab? What would it mean if a person is saying they are in hijab?
Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I think, Salma, the fact that the concept of World Hijab Day came about, and this was now to combat the politicizing of what hijab meant, or the symbolism of hijab, is where this entire shift went from modest dressing as per the Quran and the Sunnah, and what people then perceived hijab to be. So let's go down to grassroots level. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in 2 ayat of the Quran, and the reason I'm mentioning that it is from Quran directly is because there seems to be this misconception that, unfortunately is surfacing from the Islamic or the Muslim community themselves, stating that there is no proof that a Muslim woman should be covering her hair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in 2 different ayat in the Quran al-Kareem. One is Surah Al-Ahzab and one is Surah An-Nur, very clearly defining that a woman should be concealed, covered. And the scholars of the 4 madahib, and as Sunni Muslims, we take our opinions from each one of the 4 madahib. They are in agreement that the hijab means, or the covering of a Muslim woman, is everything except the hands and the face, right? So there are obviously more conservative scholars who believe that even covering the face is wajib, right? But we are taking the general opinion of all of the 4 schools and the scholars within the 4 schools. It is covering, a woman covering herself, and the a very beautiful way in which some of the scholars have put it, it is an la tasif wa la tashif, meaning that it should not be showing shape and it should not be showing through. But it doesn't just mean this. It means everything from head to toe, except the hands and the face. In fact, even the feet are disputed in the four madhahib. Imam Shafi is a bit more stringent, saying that the feet are also part of the aura of a woman. So basically, everything that should be covered whilst you are in salah is what should be covered under the concept of hijab. Then we further now go into what people have now watered down hijab and say it's not just the covering, but it is the character of a Muslim woman, undoubtedly, but that is modesty, that is haya. Haya means covering your body, protecting your speech, protecting the way you speak, your mannerism, protecting your interaction with the outside world, protecting the way you speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in salah. But I feel that when we merged between the two, we sort of made hijab not covering only, but the way we conduct ourselves. And what that translated to in way people today in the modern society see hijab is, I don't have to cover.
Then they abandon one.
I don't have to cover because as long as I'm conducting myself in the correct way as a Muslim woman. Okay. So I think it's important that we bring back to what the original definition of hijab is. And it is concealing a Muslim woman's beauty, which includes her hair, her arms, and her legs.
Fantastic. So beautifully put and clearly defined as well. And I love that you explain the aspect of modesty also, because nowadays you see a rise in what is called the modest fashion industry. But I think that is also looking at the consumer that is looking for clothes that are perhaps longer length tops or looser pants and things. But that need not necessarily be defined as hijab. It's purely just the modest fashion industry. You see it on magazines around the world. You see it on cover pages and across the band. Hijab is something completely different. And like you mentioned, World Hijab Day started to combat Islamophobia, to women that are encountering the odd look and the statements, the tweets, the ugliness that you see online. You see it all over. It's across social media, and we're getting to see what they are encountering in different parts of the world, how they are being treated. At one point, it was being ripped off their heads in the streets, especially after what was happening in Iran most recently. So, Shaa'ista, I want to bring you in here as well with your input. You're somebody that's been very well networked. If we look at, again, as time progresses, women are in the working fields, they are in corporate fields, they are doing their different tasks. So you are encountering different thoughts and opinions all the time on how a Muslim woman is supposed to look or how she's supposed to carry herself. What are your thoughts on, did you find an added responsibility on you when you perhaps got your Gateway Ambassador role at one point, or in your marketing work? Tell us about that when it comes to impressions of a Muslim woman.
So you're absolutely right, Salma. I grew up obviously from like preschool till high school. I was always in a Muslim environment, in a Muslim school, so, around our people. But once I got to campus and then started networking through my social media presence, and then also now with my corporate job, I'm not in a Muslim environment. And at most times, I'm the only female who is covered. But with that, you see such a respect, not just from the male colleagues, but from the females as well. Mm-hmm. Their approach is so different. You're so respected because of not just the head covering that you have, but the character that has to follow with that. Your colleagues know to ask, are you okay with this? Are you okay if we're eating here? Should we change to a, perhaps halal spot? And I think that it was easy enough for me to embrace my hijab, even though I'm not always in that, Muslim and Islamic environment. Even on a social level, I have lots of friends who aren't Muslim, but I'm accepted and never feel that I'm not, judged by them. Because that's our community here. That's our Muslim community we know here, but that's our Durban community in South Africa, where you travel anywhere here and you feel comfortable and you don't feel judged by covering yourself, or you don't get a second look even. I recently went overseas and I was in the States over December, and it was really cold there, so I wore my beanie, and I was because of the cold, but I was very lax with covering with the hijab as well. And I was conscious of it, but I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I believed in my mind that I don't know whether received I'll be, or how will I look with my hijab, with the beanie on. So no one knows me here, which is ridiculous. No one knows me here, and I'm just going to do whatever. And I saw so many beautiful girls there donning their hijab, whether it was, however they did it. But it's the moment when I looked at them, and I couldn't be identified as a Muslim woman at that point, but they could. I envied that. And I was jealous of that. And then that was the moment for me where I realized, no, this is part of me. Do you know what I mean? That I looked at them, I went to that popular makeup store that we all visit when we're overseas, right? And it's the biggest store in the US, and they had Muslim representation with a fully hijab covered girl with her makeup done, and she was on that back wall of the checkout counter, and it made me so proud and made me want to be that. I stood there, and I think I was in one of the makeup stores also, and I greeted a hijab girl at the checkout counter with salam, and she looked at me like,
because you didn't look good.
and I was so upset, but it was my own fault, and that's when I realized that it's part of me. It's part of my identity.
That's beautiful, and it's so realistic. Thank you for being so honest about that as well, because it's a true fact. And it does happen many times with many people, especially when they're overseas, that you begin to think. I grew up with my father telling me the same thing. You do know that Allah is everywhere, right? He's not just here, He is everywhere. But let's touch on to that a little bit when we're realizing that it isn't a concept that is purely South African. There could be Muslims in Russia that are probably better at hijab or modesty than we are, or in the States itself. A lot of people say the women in the United States are strong-willed. They because of what they encounter, that you'll find that they are a little bit more braver and a little bit more confident to dress a certain way because they feel now they are representing Islam, especially in a place like the US. I wanted give me your input a little bit on that, and also what recently happened in Iran, where you saw such a turn with so many of them wanting to just say, no, they need to be free or they need to take it off. How did that just come about all of a sudden, and how do we embrace that consciousness? And then I want to bring in the fashion aspect of it. But let's just talk on that sense, appreciating what it means to different people around the world.
So, the fact that you mentioned that story, it warms my heart, and it just sort of supports the idea that I have in my mind that us as South Africans are stronger when it comes to our relationship with our deen, as opposed to what you would perceive in an Arab world, a Muslim world, that we call it the Muslim world. Like, look for us, for example, when we think of the Haramain, we think of it as sacred land, we think of it as the birth of Islam, we think of it as the land of Tawheed. When we go there, even people who are not conscious of religion here, when they go there, they become uber conscious, right? They start covering themselves, they start being a little bit more aware of their hands and their feet. But if you go into social media, and you see the youth that are coming out from those sacred lands, they are idolizing outside. They are looking at Western culture, they're looking at modernization, and in their minds they feel we are backward. Whereas, as you were saying, when you saw those women with the scarf on, you didn't say, oppressed woman. You said, I'm embarrassed. This is my deen. Why am I not doing it? Whereas these people that are coming out of Iran are saying, why should I? Why should I? So I believe that there's two sides of the coin. There's either us who are, or those Arab states that are being completely laxed and wanting to be Western because of what they are seeing outside. And then you get people who are in Iran who are genuinely oppressed. And when I say oppressed, I don't mean enforcing that a Muslim woman should be covered, because again, this is deen.
Yeah.
It is the way that they are enforcing it, right? The harshness with which they are dealing with women, the way they are dragging them on the streets. That instead of the woman now saying, you know what, let us fight for equal treatment as human beings, they are on the other hand rebelling and saying, I don't want a hijab. I don't want it. And I've actually read an article yesterday that was written just last year, 2024, about Iranian women who are proudly going out in the world and not embarrassed at the fact that they used to once be a woman covered from head to toe, and now wearing strappy, fully tattooed, going out, and they add another agenda to it, the queer agenda, to say, my right, my choice. And that is now going out into the Western world, and they are like, well, Muslim women are being oppressed. They're not given a choice. but we aren't given a choice. Right? So they are shifting the narrative, and we as Muslims are losing track of what deen actually is. Because we are looking at them and we're saying, my hijab, my choice. All good and well if we want to tell the West that you can't dictate to me because this is freedom of religion. We have detached hijab from religion and said, my choice. If I want to, I can wear it. If I don't want to, I don't have to wear it. So I feel that there's a complete imbalance globally right now. And that's confusing us as Muslims as well. We're forgetting how it is that we should portray it to the outside world and how it is that we should behave in our inner circles.
Absolutely. If you look at it also in a broader sense, when it comes to the whole World Hijab Day concept, we can look at Islamophobia the whole day till we blue in the face. But within our own communities and within South Africa itself, we faced with scrutiny, and we also faced with little backhanded comments. Again, it's the age of social media, so whatever we put out on social media, the comments are there. I want to bring in our two business owners as well who are promoting or sell regularly clothing that caters to the Muslim shopper. And now, so Nazmeera, you are encountering people, you've been doing this for well over a decade, almost 2 decades now, I think, that you've been doing it for the longest time. And you're doing it not just in Durban, but Johannesburg as well. So you've been around and you've met different types of women that have shopped at your store. How have you understood the needs for women today? What are they looking for and what are their priorities right now? And did you see a shift over the years with the types of things that they are now looking for? What are they wearing more or less of?
So, Salma, yes, fashion has changed in the last decade.
Yeah.
Scarves as well. The whole scarf scene, it has evolved.
Yeah.
When I first started, it was, like I was telling you earlier, the stretch hijabs. And now it's gone to chiffon. It's gone to the type that I'm wearing, the ribbed. It's gone to instant. People love instant. Ready to wear, they love it. That's the first thing they want. If they're ready to wear hijab, that's the first thing they're looking for, something that's easy. In terms of clothing, everyone wants loose. And also it's very hot in Durban, so everyone feels hot. They want the coolest fabrics. They want it full length. They don't want it to show their ankles.
I love that.
And no one wants to wear any excess under their clothing,
which
means it should not be seen.
So we're conforming then with exactly what you said. And sometimes indirectly, without sounding holier than thou, that's inevitably how we're comfortable dressing. We want something loose. We want something that's going to conceal what we're not comfortable showing. We're conscious of it. And how would you find that with yours? Like when you're designing your ranges or putting out your ranges, do you find the needs to be similar?
Absolutely. I have a checklist that I follow. So it has to be long sleeves. It has to have elasticated cuffs, so it's easy for wuzu.
Wonderful.
The girls tend to like, or the ladies tend to like, long loose dresses, but they still want style attached to it.
Okay.
So they don't want something like very straight or very boring. They want style lines with it, you know. Definitely no see-through fabrics, because it's difficult, I think now, to wear inners and this, that, with the climate change.
The inner phase is long gone.
Yes.
The body tight inners.
Yes. I also try to do as high necklines as possible.
For sure.
So that, you know, when you're draping your scarf, it's easy to actually keep everything concealed. So I do find that everything it stayed standard through the years with the checklist. After that, you can, you know,
once you've got that checklist, then you're good, hey?
Yeah.
But now you're raising a tweenie. Can we call her a tweenie now as well, your daughter? Now she's going into shopping. Eventually she's going to reach the stage where she's going to want to dress a certain way as well.
Already.
Now, connected very closely to these, you've got 2 businesses, for example, here also. And she mentioned 1 or 2 things that I want to come back to Shaykha Umme Rooman about as well. With now, as you're now trying to appease the next generation, they are now perhaps they are being exposed to so much more. How hard or how easy is that then to make the modest dressing without merging it with hijab, but now still show them that, look, you can still dress a certain way while still conforming with what you need to?
And you know, you spoke about how regions, when they feel they're forced into hijab, we know, you know, according to Deen, it's what we should be doing. But when someone feels that they're forced into something, if your Deen isn't strong enough, you rebel.
You
right?
resisted, yeah.
And I think with my journey to wearing hijab, which started just 14 years ago when I had my first child, it was my choice. I remember my family looked at me and were like, what's going on?
Really?
You know, because it was an overnight thing, and I said, this is what I wanted to do. And I'm trying to guide my daughter in the same way, trying to lead by example, where she feels she's going to come to me and say, I'm ready for this. We're lucky enough that she's in an Islamic school, so that helps. But we're unlucky enough that with this day and age, being in any Islamic environment or wherever you are, being on this planet means that you're exposed to the internet and all of that, right? And as much as she understands that this is the right way, there's also like, maybe the top can be a little shorter or the jeans a little tighter, and we're having to guide that now. And I think just trying to lead by example, and luckily enough, we have enough loose clothes and modest fashion in our market, even without a 10-year-old having to cover her hair at this point, because I'm not strict on that right now. There's enough options for her to embrace her modest style and still look like a cute little tweenie that she is. And inshallah, soon enough, when she is ready and baligh, she'll embrace the hijab.
Absolutely. Now, this is very much, you're also a mom of two beautiful children, much older than tweenies now. But when we talk about that, for example, there is nothing wrong in actually wanting to look a certain way, to look good, to buy good quality things. Alhamdulillah, if somebody is earning well, maybe has the opportunity to travel, like you mentioned, to Dubai, maybe they're traveling to Milan or somewhere or the other, and they see a beautiful dress or something or the other. What would that take away then from hijab? How could you actually still maintain your own personal integrity while still looking a certain way, looking good for yourself, feeling good, shopping the right scarves, or maybe it is a beautiful jubba or abaya that you purchased somewhere in Abu Dhabi or something. It could be worth hundreds of thousands of gold thread, I don't know. But is that still okay?
So I think again, this is perception that was created by the media. I don't know whether it was for the de-Islamization of the world, where they've trivialized deen, in the sense that what was something so beautiful inwardly and outwardly, now became focused on outward beauty, right? So there's nothing wrong with wanting to be presentable, to be confident, to be dressed well. The problem arises when the entire focus is on looks only. Right? So yes, I'm covering myself, but how do I look when I'm covered? And this was a struggle that we had in our generation with our girls, right? It's because of the fact that the other Muslim women out there have put such a great focus on how it is that we look when we wear our hijab. Can I be a hijabi but trendy? Right? It sort of creates this entire mindset shift away from the true beauty of hijab and more materialistic beauty. So like I'm saying again, there's nothing wrong. The beloved Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught us to look good, to present ourselves in a good way, not to be shabby, not to be untidy, right? And that should be the focus. And Sayyidina Imam Ali radiallahu ta'ala actually said something, and I feel that it's very apt for our times today and how we deal with our children, looking at what's happening in Iran at the moment. He says, teach your children with a teaching different from the way you were taught. Now what's happening in Iran? In the past, it was a conservative nation. There was no exposure to the outside world. They enforced it, and that was it. Nobody questioned. Today, people are questioning. Girls are questioning. The youngsters are questioning. So instead of being harsh about it, we should speak about the beauty of it. We should speak about it in a very latif, a very soft, gentle way. That, you know what, this is the crown of a believer. This is something that is emulating, the Sahabiyat. Look at the great personalities within Islamic history. They also had a presence in society, but they never compromised the way they presented themselves in the outside world. And Islam at that time was expanding. right? It was going to Persian and Greek lands, and we see from the movies, right, what the Greeks were. They were elaborate, they were gold, they were fancy, the woman had, but the Muslim woman never felt the need to look the way these rich, wealthy societies look like, as opposed to what we have today. Our Muslim societies have taken the beauty of an abaya and have turned it into a fashion statement.
Yeah.
As in the thing that's supposed to be used to cover yourself. Today, people are buying it because it
attracts more attention.
Yes. We're wearing it because it represents wealth, it represents prestige, it represents the Arabian Nights, Alf Layla wa Layla. We want to do this whole, So we have gone the opposite. We have taken the beauty of what we have and looked at Western beauty and said, now we want our beauty to look like that. As opposed to us beautifying ourselves inwardly and outwardly and showing the West that I don't care about.
We'll create our own.
We'll create our own identity. I don't have to be how you are. Why don't you try to be how I am? In fact, I saw that. I actually follow this Russian girl who is living in Egypt. And if you see the Egyptian culture, they're not, how can I say, modern in the sense that we would see today, right? Where they're completely open and they're dressed funky. They're dressed very modestly. And they don't really care. Egyptian mentality is, I don't care about you or how you are or how you put it. I am me and this is how I dress. My personality is such. And she was attracted to the Egyptian woman. I mean, of all things, she was attracted to the Egyptian woman, not because it was a fashion statement, because she said, look at the confidence, look at the beauty in the hijab that she herself now started going out. So people started questioning her. You're going out into the souks and things and you're wearing a scarf and you're covering your body. Why? She says, because I think it's beautiful. So perhaps we should now start showing people that we don't have to follow your culture, you follow our culture. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I know that the reason we are doing what we are doing is because we are trying to combat the identity of the hijab as a terrorist identity, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Sayyidina Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had showed us that if you prioritize or you're pleasing Allah as opposed to pleasing society, then Allah will open up the world for you. Right? We shouldn't be worried about what other people think. We should worry about what Allah thinks. Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab said that. He says, if we are going to be worried about what other people think, we are going to be miserable for the rest of our lives. And that's how we find our young girls today. They're miserable because they're trying to fit in. Yeah. They're trying to fit in with society. Why are we trying to fit in with society? Fit in with your identity. And you'll see, inshallah, because of the beauty of deen, other people will want to be the Muslim woman, inshallah.
For sure, inshallah. I mean, I want to just bring you in here at this point also, because we touched on this off air a little while earlier as well. We said how covering was almost back in the day, it was always the older people that would cover. And then you're also looking nowadays where sometimes it's still the older generation that is covered up. Maybe the mum is even covered up. And then you'll find perhaps the younger generation's not quite in that readiness as yet. But then you also get our own family influences which are saying, okay, after she gets married, then she can consider, let her find a husband first. I want to touch into that a little bit, actually, to that generation that is still looking to get married and thinks potentially that they need to look a certain way, maybe at a wedding or at a function, or they need to be seen or need to appeal to maybe find a spouse. Do you find that to be common as well from within our own family circles?
Yeah, I think it is. There's, you see a shift where there are a lot more young girls than ever before, right?
Yeah.
Than I knew from when I was younger, and what my mom says when she was younger, who are, when you look at pictures of our grandparents, they were not as modestly dressed as, we are now, or we're teaching our girls to be. So there's that I'm seeing. And we spoke about South Africa and then different parts of South Africa embracing their modesty and their hijab in a different way. And that is all stemming from culture also, right? Although we know right and wrong, it's stemming from culture. But I think that there's a different respect, going to a wedding and your hijab is on, or there's a different beauty like we spoke of, showing up as a woman who is embracing what she is and what she stands for and her deen and showing that outwardly, as compared to, and I'm not taking away from the beauty of a woman who is not covered, but there's just that certain respect that you get. And it's difficult sometimes in a family where maybe all the girls are dressed, got a nice hairstyle for a wedding, and you are having to still want to, as a potential suitor for a someone, appear also as beautiful. But I think there really is an inner beauty that comes with that outer beauty of donning that hijab. And if I can just bring in, you spoke about the Gateway Ambassador days and whatever, and I was obviously the only covered woman at that point, and I looked at the other people who had entered to be potentially the face of a mall that was is the biggest mall in our
that we all frequent. Yeah.
Nice. And I looked at the other people who entered, and I said to myself, there's women showing off their beautiful bodies and their bathing suits, and there's guys who are on their audition pictures were topless, and I was like, what? But how do I have a place in this? And this is speaking outside of our Muslim community, right? And our Muslim families. And I said, there's no chance. Why would a brand that big, with a market that big in our city, want to be associated with someone and have someone represent their brand who outwardly show that I represent a certain religion? But and it comes back to people outside of our religion looking at it and being like, I love that, I love what you portray from wearing that. I love the confidence that you exude to still sit on a platform or do whatever it is, donning that hijab. So it's sometimes our own inner, how am I going to be, like me going to the States thinking, okay, firstly it was the terrorism thing and people were like, but there were other women who confidently wore that, where it was just me and my own inner silliness that stopped me from being confident enough with that hijab. So it really comes with that inner confidence and just embracing who you are. And I think if we teach our young girls this, our daughters, that this is who we are and we proudly who we are, and that's going to ensure that love of our
Absolutely, you have to be proud of who we are.
Nafs.
The concept of nafs.
We're constantly battling with our nafs. It's not an outward thing. It's an inward battle to every individual. Fighting to find our place or our relationship with our Creator. That's what it is. The problem arises is when we take that inward battle and we feed it with what's outside.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank you before we continue with the discussion. I know you have to jet off and leave us, but I definitely want to pick up on this again because I think there's so much to unpack on this itself. And it'd be wonderful to actually one day sit down and take callers and engage with a live audience, some Q&As. So we definitely are going to hold on. Please consider an invite to part 2.
Thank you.
And we're going to follow up on the discussion. But thank you so much for making the time to actually spend time with us this morning, Shaa'ista.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. And I think if there'll be one little girlie or woman who treads in the path of hijab because of our discussion and our panel here, inshallah, today, then our job here is done. And yes, I'd love to continue this discussion.
Inshallah, for sure. That is the purpose. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Allah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to this very special panel discussion in commemoration of World Hijab Day, 1st of February 2025. Joining me today is Shaykha Umme Rooman Soofie. We've got Nazmeera and Sister Fazana joining us in studio as well, both our dynamic businesswomen representing the modest fashion industry in Durban, but also we've clearly so far in our discussion put on the table what hijab symbolizes, what it actually means, and also the rise and growth of the modest fashion industry and how they can somewhat play into each other without actually blurring the lines as to what the other is. The hijab is not dependent on fashion. It isn't fashion. It is a concept, a large concept in that. But what we spoke about earlier, and I want to expand on that a little bit now, is I have a daughter of my own who is 8 years old. You've got much older daughters. You've got daughters as well. And I want to talk about that, raising future hijab conscious women, raising the women of the future who are going to raise their own children. That's a huge responsibility. And raising girls in general handle is a big responsibility. But something like this, without sounding like when we had Shaa'ista on earlier, sounding too controlling or too dominating, we can't go too with a gentle approach here, but at the same time also a guiding approach. But you said something that stuck with me now, and you said about this generation. Just say it for me the way you said it earlier. What is so significant about this generation that you think is different to the girls of the past? Just say it the way you said it.
That you love the way I say it. I got teenage girls.
Yes,
so
yes.
Got to learn the lingo.
You know the Gen Z lingo. Do you know it?
I actually researched it for fun because I wanted to see how much they know.
Okay.
Because if they know a lot of it, it means they're spending a lot of time on social media. So I did it for other in the gender to catch them out of how much they are out there. Anyway, so I was, before I get to that point, I actually was thinking about it now. And you notice that society constantly shifts.
Right.
Mindsets change. Earlier we had a discussion saying that, our grandparents never covered, or they used to be more relaxed and they used to be more chilled when it came to, I suppose that would be in the less conservative homes, right? But then if you go one more generation back, they were uber conservative, right? So every generation, it sort of shifts from conservative people who are deen conscious to people who get lost, who get impacted. And it's not only this modern society, but it happened in the past as well. And I'll bring you back to Egypt itself. Remember, we were speaking about Egypt today and how it's not such a modern culture. But if you go back in history, you'll find at the time of the Pashas, they were actually very modern. They used to wear short skirts, right? Even the Muslim woman used to dress with short skirts. Even today, if you look at Jordan, we'll find that there are a lot of girls and a lot of women who are covering themselves. But go back in the history, every one of them wore short skirts and sleeveless tops and open hair. So across the globe, there is always a shift in each generation. And unfortunately, our generation was the generation that was anti-Islam. When I say anti-Islam, I mean we were not as rigorous in following the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as opposed to this generation, and the word I used was, this generation is very woke when it comes to deen.
Yes.
Right? So we are looking at how are we going to teach our girls? Well, our girls are teaching us. Our girls currently are teaching us. If you look at the younger girls, and I speak from personal experience of many young girls who have come to me because they're seeing things on social media of these young, men and women who are studying deen and who are promoting deen and who are speaking about deen. They want to be those people. So instead of becoming influencers in the modern sense, they want to become deen influencers. They want to learn about deen. Right? And then their parents, which is our generation, is discouraging them. Is telling them, as you were saying earlier, wait a little bit until you get married. They're telling them to take off their scarves.
Yeah.
They're telling them stop dressing like old ladies. Take it off. So the issue here is not our current youth. It is their children that are going to be the ones who are going to suffer the most because of the shift in generation. So I believe that we need to teach our generation that the importance of hijab is not a look in community or society or how it should be, but it is actually a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we should not discourage our young children. I've seen so many young teenage girls whose mothers are not covered, but the girls are covered. Not when I say covered, I don't mean fashionably covered. Modest way. The real concept of modest way. We have teenage girls who are like this, but their mothers are open. And this is what we are seeing in society. So should we be teaching our children, or should we be learning from our children? That's the question.
They're nodding their heads.
I cannot tell you how I see this at my store, where the mom is wearing no hijab and very fashionably dressed, and the daughter will come. Full cloak, full scarf. She doesn't want anything tight.
Wow.
She wants everything 2 sizes bigger because she doesn't want to show any shape. And the mom is like, but why? But why? Take
You're
it to
young.
the sides.
You're young. Yeah.
But no, this girl and 17, 18-year-old girls. It's that's why I'm laughing, because I see it.
Definitely there
I
is a
see.
shift.
You also mentioned about your
Yes,
daughter. Tell us about that.
So she just completed university, but the group of girls that she was with all wore hijab, and they didn't take it off for any reason whatsoever. They interrupted their lessons to go down to the Jamaat Khana to read their namazes. And they were so well respected by the fellow students that they were surrounded with. So that was like, I was amazed, really. I was very, very proud of these girls.
You definitely should be. You
Yes.
also mentioned, Nazmeera, how the international industry is having to cater for that generation.
So we were discussing the young girls, and I travel every year before Ramadan
Yeah.
to Turkey to buy stock for my store for the Ramadan rush, and I have like suppliers that cater just for modest clothing for the teenagers. So they start from like an 11-year size to a 15 to 16-year-old size, and it's modest clothing, but it's trendy. So you don't look like an old lady.
Yeah, but trendy in the sense, not
It's appealing to
it's
the age
youthful.
group.
Yes.
There we go.
It's age appropriate.
Yes.
So the problem that we were having here is that, and I'll tell you this because of my second daughter, she was 12 and a half, 13 when she went into hijab. And I found it difficult to find youthful
Yes,
clothing.
it looks too
for her.
adult on them.
It looks adult.
Yes.
So it's not maybe about the fashion or the trend of it, but it's age appropriate
100%,
clothing. And
absolutely.
alhamdulillah, we are finding this when I went to Malaysia, and it was just before she had started hijab. And I saw the Malaysian young girls. So when I came back home and it was her turn to get into hijab, I found a deficit. I couldn't find clothes that would suit her age. Where I could find it in Turkey, I could find it in Malaysia, you find it in Indonesia, age-appropriate clothes.
Turkey was huge role players in
Yes.
fashion as concerned, but it made it easier for a lot of women that are modestly dressed or in hijab to actually from the tracksuits to just the garments. Their range was amazing. Even Malaysia, Indonesia is one of your largest hijab suppliers around the world, and you must have seen that yourself.
And pure hijab. Hijab
Yeah.
in the pure concept of what a hijab is. Like I think earlier we were talking about wanting to wear the tops shorter.
Yeah.
The Malaysian girls are so beautifully modest. I myself felt embarrassed, let's put it that way. They were wearing shirts that were up to their knees. They call it the baju kurung.
Okay.
And underneath that is a skirt.
Yes, I've
Yes.
seen it in Malaysia, yes.
I mean, that's a whole other level of modesty. And then I was actually engaging one of the girls, and she was like, you know, they wear their scarves with
Over the
entire
front.
front is covered. So now the modern generation, when I say modern, it's not our version of modern, their version of modern, is that the scarves are worn here and it's not covering here. And they said, our parents shouted at us. They said, your scarf must drape here, even though they're wearing a long, loose
Yes.
top
Wow.
and a skirt, they still had the covering. So we've got a long way to go before we actually reach the true concept of modesty.
Yeah.
And we should take our example from these, these youngsters and these states.
It also ties in, and I'm in no way learned or anything, but I always think of, was it Bibi Fatima with the narration with how she wanted to be covered.
Completely concealed.
Just share that with us, even for her kafan. Just share that story.
Sayyidah Fatima Zahra is the epitome of modesty.
Yeah.
And that is the type of haya and modesty that a Muslim woman should aspire to. Like we say, we always have these role models when it comes to males, right? We have Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the most perfect of example. The equivalent of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam for a woman is Sayyidah Fatima Zahra. This is where the journey comes in, where we talk about this is my journey to Allah. Your journey isn't from completely open to wearing a trendy hijab. Your journey is from covering yourself to reaching that level of coverage, the level of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra. She was so modest that when she would walk, there was a narration where the Sahaba mentioned that we knew that it was her who entered the room because of the way she walked. Her walk resembled the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not from anything else, not from shape, not from color, not from, it was just the way she walked, which means if you have to look at a person from behind, even if they're not walking, you can tell who the person is. How concealed was Sayyidah Fatima Zahra that they couldn't even tell from her outer garment, from behind, who she was or who she wasn't, until she moved. And her movement resembled her father. So this is the journey that a Muslim woman should actually have. The way we are covered today, and what I'm wearing is actually an embarrassment to Sayyidah Fatima's legacy, right? To what she was, where even her janaza, she refused to have it, where her body would show. And that's where the origination of the covering that we have today.
Yes.
The arch covering came from Sayyidah Fatima Zahra, because she said,
Her
I want
shape
to completely cover, nobody must see even what my body inside of my kafan looks like. And her janaza was in the dark of the night, it was concealed. Even in death, she concealed, she was conscious of her haya in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Wow, that's so amazing. It came to mind when you were speaking, and I just said, with my daughter's name being Fatima, I always tell her this is a legacy we aim to leave behind, and these are the people we aspire to be like. Entering into the month of Ramadan, exactly 30 days or just a month away now. For many businesses, this is your busiest time of the year.
Yes.
This is when your shops come alive. Is it true that this is the busiest time for a business? How does it get during Ramadan time?
It's chaotic.
Yeah.
It's chaotic. We get ready from February. Well, the month before we're getting ready, we're setting up, and as I was telling you earlier, a lot of ladies don't wear hijab in Ramadan, in the 365 days a year, but in Ramadan they want to cover.
The Ramadan hijab is,
Which is a good thing, because you don't know, maybe inshallah this
it.
Ramadan they
It's the
would wear.
beginning,
It's the
inshallah.
beginning. It's the beginning. So we get ready, we have our scarves well set up, everything ready.
You said you have to tell your staff, let's shift into Ramadan
Yes.
mode now, the busy season.
Yes, we shift.
What do you find some of the common things that happen during Ramadan? Do you find the messages start coming on Instagram already for the new range, new collection?
Gee, definitely, it is our busy time, and I only release limited edition garments throughout the year. So I do, at this time, I start planning maybe from, if now Ramadan is in February, March, then I start from January, because I design and I make all my stuff here locally. So very, very seldom do I import it.
So what can we expect
So,
on the palette this Ramadan, this Eid,
I
shall we
must tell
say?
you that before there was a huge trend more towards shirts and pants and dresses, but I think, Nazmeera, in the last 2 years,
I think
it's been more abayas.
Abayas. It's been
People going back to the
abayas.
abayas.
People are going big back into
Yeah.
abayas.
So,
She's right. It
yeah.
used to be the pants, the
Yeah.
shirts, a lot of the dresses, but no longer. It's abaya.
But it's still modern, so it's more the throws with the very broad pants and camisoles inside.
And then the throw over.
And then the very loose throw over. So you still don't see a shape, but it's modern. So it
Different modern
appeals,
styles.
and then it appeals to the younger generation as well, and they want to wear it because it's in style. And as you said, that social media plays such a big or has such a big influence. So that's what they're seeing. They're seeing this overseas, and then they want it here.
As we're rounding up, it's important points that I want to also take away points as well. We all are spending time on social media, I myself, and I follow many of these, you would call them influencers or hijab personalities from around the world. Back in a few years back, if we look 10 years back, there were some big names that were on the hijab scene. There was your Dina Tokyos, there was your Asias, there was Amina Khan, who we spoke about, who were at that time had their own brands. They had brands. They were the people we were watching their YouTube videos, and that's how you're going to tie our scarf. They were iconic at that stage. None of them wear scarves anymore. They're not covered, and we can say that openly because they're quite open about it as well on their platforms.
Which generation are they?
Now, again, it's linking to what you said. It is our generation. How do you think we can handle that going forward, and how should we be mindful of who we are following online? Again, I've spoken to you about this also. I'm not sure if you follow Sana Khan, who was an Indian celebrity, and she went absolutely, like, she became an internet sensation because she had this, and she expressed the dream that she had. And if you watch her videos and you go back to it, she says she dreamt of her grave burning. And it shook her so much to the point that people thought, no, see, she married the mufti, he must be forcing her to dress a certain way. That came up, and she said it openly. I was scared when after that dream, and she's living the best life, just had her second baby, and she's got her own brand of abayas. So leave us with something on who we may be following online and what we should be mindful of.
So let's take her as an example.
Yeah.
The fact that she had that 360 shift, it was because the attachment was not with what she saw, but what she felt inside. So it was the realization that if I don't fix my life, there is no future for me in the akhirah. You finished, right? And that is the key point here, is that we should not be encouraging our children to wear hijab like, look how cool she looks, look how trendy, look how cute. You can still look nice even if you put a scarf on. The focus should not be outward beauty. The focus should be the cleansing internally. The focus should be building a relationship or a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the outward beauty will not matter. So I believe if we now start educating people more, instead of turning the hijab industry into a fashion statement, like for instance when we see the West, and again I think it's the West that's trying to de-Islamize the world by saying that there's a hijabi ramp model. Oh, there's the first hijabi sportswoman.
Yeah.
There's the first hijabi cover girl. There's the first hijab, and we say, oh, proud. That's not pride. That's embarrassment. We should not be proud about that, because those people are covering their hair, but they are not representations of a Muslim woman, an authentic Muslim woman following in the footsteps of Sayyidah Fatima az-Zahra. The covering is not just covering your hair. The covering is an attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a realization that we are not here to please anyone but Him, Jalla Jalaluhu. So when we see organizations allowing in their uniforms, that is something to be proud of. For instance, like an airline who never used to allow a Muslim woman to cover her hair when she is performing her duty, and then saying we now have hijabis or our uniforms now.
Hijabi pilots.
That's
or something.
pride.
Okay.
Because the woman can now exist in society, fulfill her obligations to her Lord, earn her honest living, but at the same time not compromise her deen. As opposed to a woman who is taking up modeling. That's not deen. A Muslim woman should not be a model in the first place. Or a Muslim woman who is a fitness promoter, who is wearing complete tight clothing but a scarf on her head. And we are saying, oh, look, Nike now has hijabs.
Yeah.
But that hijab is not what deen actually is. So we need to, define clearly what it is that a Muslim woman should be, how she should portray herself in society. What do we want to show our children? Do we want to show our children, look, we are proud that even DJs are now Muslim women? Is that what it should be? That a Muslim woman who is in a niqab is a DJ, and is that progressive? That's not progressive, that's going back.
And you're not even making that up, that's a real thing.
That's a real thing. I was
Yeah.
shook to my core. And it's not one, there are multiple DJs, right? In Saudi, I think it was Riyadh.
All eyes on Saudi for the next couple of years.
It is because, when they had there was a music festival that they had very recently, I think it was about 2 years ago. From that point, all of this started blowing up.
Yeah.
And it's because their youth want it. These people who are living in the sacred land want it. Why do you want that? Why are you promoting to the world or telling the West, look, I can also be like you, but I can still adorn mine? The concept of a Muslim woman is not just her adornment.
Yeah.
It is how she is in society. There is a definitive red line. There are things that we can do and things that we can't do. We should not water it down and say a Muslim woman can be whoever she wants, can do whatever she wants. No. As long as it is defined within the deen of Allah, then yes, you can do it. But there are things like being a DJ or,
or maybe even following the TikTok trends, like what?
Following the TikTok trends, right? It doesn't say, oh, because I have my hijab, I can do whatever I want. We are taking away religiosity and we are making it modern. So I hope, inshallah, that with this conversation, many more people become woke, since you like the word.
They need to be shook and woke. I know what other words they are.
Is, and instead of saying, and I'm going to add one more thing, and I don't know if you've seen it, there is a pole dancer who's in hijab.
What?
please remind me, I must send you this video.
Oh.
I saw this on Instagram as well. And proudly, I'm a hijabi, but I'm a pole dancer. Wallahi, I'm not even making this up. So, I mean, is this hijab?
Yeah.
Is this hijab, or is this what the West is saying? This, cover your hair and do
And
whatever
do everything
you
you
want.
want. Yeah.
No, we can't do whatever we want. A Muslim woman cannot be, the same would go with feminism, right? People will say, a Muslim woman can do everything a man can do. No, she can't. No, she can't. There are certain things that a Muslim woman can do, as like for instance, earning a living and going out and doing it. But there are certain things that a Muslim woman cannot do, and we should not, for fear of being left out or for fear of people looking at us as a backward society, water down what Deen actually is. It's right or it's wrong. And I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, grant the next generation hidayah, because that generation is where my greatest fear is with the children of our children. May Allah inshallah guide them.
Ameen, inshallah. Nazmeera, thank you so much also for joining us. Any final words from you, your thoughts on our discussion today and the way forward, inshallah?
Well, I think
what's going through your mind?
So much. So much. Your talk was so inspiring. I can't tell you. I wish I could take you to my store and just...
We'll take her to the store. No.
And just speak. I have to tell you, I'm so inspired by what you've said.
It's the atmosphere of open conversation.
It is.
That actually aids in getting a message across. So I appreciate.
And especially since you are going to be meeting so many women, and you have the opportunity yourself to meet these women, these girls that are coming into your store on a day-to-day basis. We make dua for lots of barakah for you, inshallah, this Ramadan. Thank you for taking the time out to sit with us and spend the time with us.
She's just great.
And Fazana, you haven't been hijab styling for a while though, but your days of bridal hijab styling and things, your final words maybe to the brides or the women raising daughters, or your final thoughts on today?
So inshallah, we make dua that everybody enjoys their journey, and that their journey ultimately leads them to Allah.
Ameen.
That is the end goal at the end of the day.
That's the end goal for all of them.
For sure. And that certainly was the point of today's discussion as well, to invoke that no matter who we can be talking about the hijab to, spreading the word across the world, it starts here, it starts from your home, it starts with your own families, your own neighbors, your extended families, your in-laws, whoever it may be. Have this discussion today with your daughters and with your wives or whoever it may be, and may it inspire you in every single way. And we're so honored and thrilled to be able to have the discussion with you, the first of many to come, inshallah. Have a beautiful Ramadan and a beautiful year ahead, inshallah. With lots of love from me, Salma Kazi Wahab. Until next time, for Al Ansar YouTube and Radio Al Ansar, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.